Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I just wanted to make this little video on how to turn granny squares, simple granny squares, into a beautiful sweet summer vest that I made. Now there are endless possibilities on how to put granny squares together, endless projects, and I just honestly wanted to show you guys how I make this sweet summer vest that I have made. But I will put all the ideas around for what you can do with granny squares. Okay, so the first thing that we're gonna do to make this nice summer vest is we are going to arrange all of our granny squares the way we like it to how we want the vest to look. For me, I basically just laid out all my granny squares flat like this. I have two together here because this part will be the panel in the front. So I'm just going to fix up what I set up here. So here we have the back panel as well as the part of the front panel on top of the back panel. So I did at least 3 pieces each for a total of 9 granny squares for the back panel, and then I did 1 on top of each of them for the 2 side panels, and then I put 1 on each side for a total of, I did for 1 and 2 on each side so that way it's nice and comfortable and it's not too tight when it's all said and done. And also for this project, for this video, we will be using some white yarn. I have some leftover old stash yarn from one of my old stores that I used to go to a while back. So we are going to be using that as well as a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. And you will also need scissors to cut on the ends once we are done with each angle or each piece, the way we're going to connect this. So the way we're going to connect this is we are going to take off the front panel pieces first and set those aside. And so now where we're going to begin is we're going to begin this way from right to left. And we're going to be putting these pieces together like this to slip stitch the sides together. So this part we're going to work on first. So the way we're going to do it is you're going to leave a long enough strand for weaving in later, and you're going to make a slip knot. Take your hook, and you have your slip knot, and now we are going to slip stitch these 2 pieces together right along this line. So you're going to go into this one, into the first chain of the chain space, and then you're going to go back this way into the other side of the other square, and you're just going to do a yarn over and pull through those 2 loops, and then now you're just going to go into the next stitch and into the other stitch on the other square and do the same thing. So you're going to go in, and you're going to go right into this stitch here, and you're just going to do a slip stitch. And this is how we connect our squares together to make this vest. In this stitch, in the next stitch like that. You're just going to keep doing that all the way down until you reach the first chain in the next chain space. Okay, so I'm at my next chain space, and so we're just going to go into this stitch right here, and then into the next stitch right there on the other side, yarn over, and pull through. And now we have fully connected our 2 granny squares together for our back panel. So now we're gonna do exactly what we did here to these two as well. So you're gonna grab your next two granny squares and you're going to connect it to the squares you just connected. So you're gonna go into that first chain of each square like that. And you're just gonna do yarn over and you're gonna pull through. And just keep on doing that until you reach the next chain space like we did before. So go ahead and do that and I'll meet you when we get to the next part. And also just before you start the next row to put the squares together for the rest of the back panel, you're just going to do a chain one at the end and you're going to fasten off for this row. Just like leave a long enough strand or a string to weave in later. And then now we are going to, so this is flipped is how I have it. So like when you're done slip stitching each square together, because you're going to be slip stitching the first 6 for the back panel, and then you're going to slip stitch the next row, which is about the 10 squares. Okay, so I have now slip stitched these squares together. So now we're going to do the same thing we did here to these squares right here. So it's going to be 2, 4, 6, 8. For the next 10 squares down this way, we're going to do the same thing we did right here. Okay, so I just wanted to show you guys this part where I have all the squares faced upward, to show you that we're going to be doing the same thing we did right here to these squares right here. And that's going to be the last slip stitch of the rest of these squares together. And then I'll show you guys what we're going to do for the front panels. So make a slip knot and take your 2 end squares and just go into this stitch right here, which is the chain space, and then into the next chain space. And like I said, you're just going to slip stitch the squares like how we did for the first squares that we did. And you're just going to continue doing that until you have all these squares put together. And then I'll show you how we do this way and this way. Basically the same thing as how we're connecting them. Okay, so I finished these squares and now we're going to take our next set of squares right here and we're just going to do the same technique that we've been doing. We're just going to slip stitch until we have all squares connected. Okay, so I have finished these 2 squares here and now we're going to connect these 2 together. And just make sure that your string is extended a little bit. So we're going to put that underneath like this, so that way you can get into the gaps. And we are just going to slip stitch. So we're going to go into this first chain right here, into this chain right here in the chain space, and then take the other square and go into that first chain space like that. Yarn over and pull through and just tighten up that slip stitch a little bit. Go into the next stitch like this and into this stitch like that, like a crossover, and pull through. And just keep on doing this until you reach the next chain space, and then we'll connect these squares and then these squares the same way we're doing this right now. So I'm going to continue doing this until I finish my squares, and I'll meet you back up to how we connect the rest of everything. Okay, so I've connected all the squares, and so now we are just going to do a chain 1, and then we're going to fasten off, leaving a little bit of a tail to weave in the ends. And basically of how we're going to connect the rest of our squares is just exactly how I showed you here in this video. Just doing the slip stitch technique in each of the stitches, So, and once it comes to these corners here, you will have maybe 1 or 2 chain spaces in the chain space, or 1 or 2 stitches. So you'll just be doing the same thing we did here, just going into this in the stitches, slip stitching everything together, and then we will get on to the outline border, which we are going to do in black, which is going to make the vest look very nice and clean and ready for the summer season. Okay, so for the rest of this tutorial, I'm gonna be doing off camera, but I will tell you what you are going to do to finish off the back panel. Is you're going to do basically the slip stitching technique that we did for these squares, but except you're going to be going down this way to connect the leftover openings here, here, and for this part here. So I am going to do this off camera and I'll meet you back up. Okay, so I am back with the back panel all stitched up. So the way I do the front panel is that I take basically 3 squares, attach the same way I attach the back with a slip stitching like this for 1, 2, and 3. And then I slip stitch these squares together so that way it forms up the armhole and the side. So for this side, you're basically going to do what I just did here for my front panel, and then I will meet you guys back up for the outer lining brim to finish off this summer vest, and as well as to weave in your ends. Okay, so I have finished connecting all of my squares for the vest, and now we're gonna start with the brim lining. So we're gonna go all the way around with black, as well as for the outer arm opening. So go ahead and grab your black yarn, make a slip knot. Also, sorry about my lighting, one of my light bulbs is flickering a little bit. So what we're gonna do, you're not gonna make any slip stitches, you're just gonna start doing single crochet all the way around this armhole. So I like to do the armholes first because it's faster, and then do the outer brimming for the outer vest part. So you're just gonna go into this first chain stitch or chain space, and you're gonna do a single crochet. I usually do 2 single crochets for each chain space here, and just like that. I know black is a little harder to see, but I do 2 single crochets in this chain space. But for this chain space right here, we're just gonna be doing just 1 single crochet. So for those little areas of where it looks like it's more closed in, you can just do 1 in here, but I usually do 2 for the rest of the parts. So we're just gonna single crochet in each stitch all the way around for the squares. See, all single crochets. And then I'll show you how I do the smaller chain space. And also, if you do have a little bit of a hard time with knowing how to do the slip stitching for the squares to put them together, you can always go back into the video and see how I do it. It's a simple process. So I'm going to do 1 and 2 in this chain space. I'm going to put those strands down right there, and we're going to go into this one, into this chain space here, and we're just going to do 1 single crochet. I usually like to make sure that the single crochet for this chain space is a little bit tight, so that way it doesn't leave any holes or gaps. And then you're just going to go into the next chain space and do 2 single crochets. And then just single crochet in each stitch until you reach the next 2 chain spaces. Let's turn our vest around here so we can get a better angle. So I want to continue doing this, and then I'll meet you back up to show you how it comes out. And then I'll show you, then we're gonna start doing I'll start the second one, the second armhole, and then we will get to the rest of the brim for this big area right here. Okay, so I have made it back to the beginning where we started off. So you're gonna go into that first single crochet that you did in that chain space, and then you're gonna just do a simple slip stitch to end the round. And then just do a chain 1 and fasten off, using a little bit of a tail to even your end. That is how you do the armhole. We're gonna do the same thing for the other armhole, and then I will show you guys how we do the outer brimming, which is pretty easy. So I'll meet you back up after I do the second armhole. Okay, so I have just started off on doing the lining for the outer part here. So what I did is that I did 2 single crochets into this chain space, and then I did single crochet in each stitch all the way down up to here, because now we are going to chain 51 chains, because we're going to add like a little like bow tying strap or string, so when you wear this you can easily tie it in the middle here to make it like more extra cute and nice to wear, and that way if you want to like close it you can just tie it up. So yeah, so I started with 2 single crochets in the chain space here, crochet in each stitch, and like I said, do 2 single crochets in each chain space, and then you're going to stop on this cluster here, on this stitch in this cluster. And now we're going to chain 51, and once you're done with 51 chains, you're going to go into the second chain from the hook and just do slip stitch down back into, and then single crochet back into this stitch, and then just do single crochet as normal. So go ahead and do your string, your tie string, and I'll meet you back up for us to do the rest. Okay, so I've done my slip stitches of my 50 chains, and now we're gonna go back into this stitch and do a single crochet, and then just do a single crochet all the way. And like I said before, you will be doing 2 single crochets in this chain space, 1 in this one, and then 2 in this one. So what you did for this side, you will do the same thing for this side, and you'll be going into this cluster here. Sorry about my lighting, my lamp is being a pain. You'll be going into this stitch right there and doing the same thing you did here for the chain. So go ahead and finish up your single crochets, and I will meet you back up to show you how I do the bottom. Okay, so I have finished this side. I did the same thing I did for this side. Did the chain of 50, well 51, and then did 50 slip stitches down. and did another single crochet in that stitch, and then single crocheted all the way to this corner. So the way I do the bottom is that I did 4 single crochets in this chain space. So the 2 that you started off with when you first started the brimming, that you're gonna do an extra 2 single crochets at the end, so that way in total you'll have 4 like I have here. I know it's a little hard to see, but there's 4 single crochets in this chain space. And so now we're just gonna do single crochets all the way around the bottom, like as we've been doing. Single crocheting in each stitch, and then doing 2 single crochets in each chain space. So go right ahead and do the bottom, and I will meet you back up for how we're going to join the round and do our weaving of the ends. Okay, so I have reached the beginning of the whole entire border of the chain space here, and I have put 2 extra single crochets. Like I said, you're gonna have 4 single crochets in these bottom chain spaces. And so now to finish off the round or the border, we're gonna go into that first single crochet that you did, and we're just gonna do a simple slip stitch, and then chain 1, and then you're going to fasten off, cutting a tail long enough to weave in, and just pull that string through. And so now you're all done with the border, with the lining. And so now I'm going to show you how to weave in your ends, especially the white areas, because those are the trickiest parts. So normally what I do is I do the armholes first, but you can decide where you want to start off to weave in your ends. It's entirely up to you. I just like to start with the easy parts. So we are going to take our darning needle, and we are just going to start off with the black string and just put that through. And basically what you're going to do is you're just going to weave in through underneath the single crochet stitches that you did for the armholes, like this. And just weave in under the stitches, under these 2 lines. So that way it gives a nice clean look for your project. And I usually, for this project, I actually weaved in my ends all the way through, so that way when I pulled a little bit to straighten out the armholes and the linings, that it did not show any strings loose or hanging. That way you don't have to cut so many ends off. Next thing you know, you have so many like little strands of yarn laying around. But it's entirely up to what you want to do. I usually just try and make sure that I weave my ends in enough, so that way I don't have to have strands like this, but this one apparently has a little bit of a leftover. So yeah, that's how I do it with the black one. And for my white ones, I usually just go into the double crochet stitches. I go in like this, and I usually go in between the stitches here under those like little loops that show up, and I just weave them in like that. And I usually just go in until I don't see any more leftover string, so that way it doesn't have anything hanging and you don't have too many clippings afterwards. And that's all you're basically doing for the rest of for all of your ends to weave in. So I'm going to weave in all of my ends, and I'll meet you back up. But this is basically everything you have to do to just finish off this lovely vest. So go and weave in your ends in, and I'll meet you back up to see how it came out. Okay, I'm back and I have finished weaving in all of my ends. Look how nice it looks. all nice and done. So now it is ready to be worn. And if you're wondering like of how to block your items, I suggest a steam blocker, which I will be using at some point for mine. But yeah, here's the vest all set and ready to go. So if you like this tutorial or this this video for how to make put granny squares together to make a vest or any piece of clothing, please let me know. I don't mind any criticism in the comments. Please, and also give this video a thumbs up if you really liked it, if you liked how I explained everything, and just subscribe to my channel. It really helps me in the algorithm out. And I will see you in my next video for what other next project I will be making.